Uh, Nice to see everyone on the call. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Really excited to give you an overview on Simon and then, do most of the fun part in being in the demo. So we'll do a quick round of introductions. I will kind of give you all a brief overview of Simon, who we are, who we work with, and how we kind of stick out in the very crowded customer data platform space. And then we'll leave time, a certain amount of time for Paolo to go through the demo. Q&A here's at the end. We are going to reserve a good 5-10 minutes for Q&A here, but I would love for you all to kind of use a chat and the Q&A box as a place to hop in throughout the presentation and throughout the demo as questions come up. Don't be afraid to let them rip, and please don't hold them. Having this be interactive is how we've seen these sessions be the most fun and beneficial for the folks who have joined in the past. So briefly, I'll introduce myself and then I'll let Paolo introduce himself. I am Ben Lepatighi. I've been at Simon for nearly 3 years now, working primarily with our enterprise and mid-market clients in the retail verticals, as well as a focus on the marketplaces and subscription and B2B2C. Paolo, want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Paolo. I'm on the solutions team here at Simon. Great looking forward to our call today. Very excited to be on and walk through the demo today. Ben and I will be tag teaming the demo, and I guess I'll say for a third time, very excited to be on the call for everyone here.
Cool. So brief intro to Simon. We've been around since 2015, and we kind of started working with a lot of those quote unquote hot D2C brands from that time in the mid 2010s. So the Barks, the Aways, the Caspers of the world. And there's kind of two through lines in the type of customers we work with. We work with really kind of new, founded in the last 10, 15 years, brands that are hyper focused on data, regardless of the size of data they might have or the size of their customer file. Everything they do from inception has been data driven. And a lot of them, started purely as D2C and have built their way into brick and mortar and more traditional retail. And then, we've worked with quite a few enterprise brands like Allegiant, like Zillow, like Wyndham, who really have taken a pretty significant step in their digital transformation journey by bringing on Simon to kind of help modernize both their workflow between tools, but also break down data silos that might have existed between teams, particularly on the kind of technical side, engineering side, and the marketing side. So kind of playing off of that is why our customers work with us it can be bucketed into two large overarching categories, and we'll get into the minutia of it throughout the presentation in the platform, but really there's moving fast with data. So what we do here is we connect to all your data sources, not just your CRM, not just your e-commerce, but we're looking to grab as much data as possible. That includes quote unquote, fast moving data, real-time data. So your site activity, maybe your app activity, if you have an app, things coming in through customer support. We're grabbing all that data and we're unifying it into one standardized schema. We are schema on read, meaning you don't have to do any of the hard work to transform or format that data before it hits Simon. We're actually pulling that data in and creating a schema once it's in Simon. With that schema, what we're doing then is creating a graphical interface for the single view of the customer. So folks that are non-technical, low code can essentially navigate to any customer profile that they know they have. So you could find, my email address, dlepaggy@Simon Data in your CRM file, and then find all the things you know about Ben, all the attributes, as well as the machine learning scores associated with Ben. From there, having a single view of the customer is great, but being able to build cohorts and use some of the predictive modeling that we provide out of the box to then start to find some pretty cool segments that might be a little bit different than what you're doing today, which are typically a little bit higher level segmentation around newsletter opt-ins or LTV or first time and second time purchaser. They're really getting quite granular with the data using web behavior, engagement behavior from different channels, lifetime value, RFM models, purchase and churn propensity, et cetera. Really provides you some pretty nuanced groups that you can start to experiment and really personalize messaging to. So that's the left side of kind of the diagram we view as Simon. On the right side then, and this is where we're quite differentiated in the space, is once you have all that rich data and are ready to go to market, we're not just telling you, download a CSV and upload it somewhere else, but we've actually built quite a bit of connections into outbound marketing channels. So we support most major email, SMS, push, ad channels, CX, and on-site destinations, out of the box. So meaning when you send to Simon, you can find a little box to enter your credentials for Facebook, for Klaviyo, for Iterable, whatever it might be. And then you can push audiences to those channels. You can also even trigger messaging for those channels that support that, like Iterable or Attentive, let's say. So that's coordinating across channel, right? So it allows you to then, regardless of the vendors you're using, coordinate across different channels so that you have one consistent customer journey. The next two pieces are pretty important in independent pillars of Simon is we're moving testing and experimentation upstream of the end channel. I think a lot of folks do testing as maybe send time optimization testing or subject line experimentation, but within Simon, because that testing is above your end channels, you're able to test a lot of things like channel of preference, what channel works the best, when does it make sense to send an email versus an SMS, when does it make sense to suppress someone from an ad channel versus put them into that end channel. And with that comes all this reporting out of the box in Simon. So while we do allow for this reporting to be exported into your business intelligence tool, if you're at that scale, for a lot of folks, they want to have those insights contextual to the marketer in the same platform where they launch the experiment so they can iterate quickly. So those are kind of the key pillars of Simon. Where we work is then across multiple stages of the customer lifecycle, pretty much all the way from awareness to getting folks to become high lifetime value repeat purchasers. So from awareness, if someone is known or not known, we're actually cookieing a lot of these users that are visiting your sites, but might not be providing you any sort of first party data. Ultimately, they might come back a few days later and they want that 10%, 20% welcome series offer. So they're signing up for your newsletter. At that point, what we'll do is we'll backstitch that data to the previously unknown browsing behavior. So you have a pretty solid view of what has this customer done before they began to engage with my brand. From there, we're handling the rest of the life cycle through getting someone to that first order, post-sales experience, any sort of CX involvement, ultimately having your customer support team have as much data as possible, either within their tool or giving them access to Simon is quite valuable to make sure that they're best equipped to handle anything that might come up, particularly with consumer expectations rising in that category today. And where we really focus then is on this last mile, the right side, getting folks who have purchased once to purchase on a repeated fashion for subscription businesses, getting folks to convert from some sort of trial offer and then stay for 3 to 4 to 5, 6 months, where we typically see a good amount of stickiness from there. Really, a big value prop of Simon is not just improving kind of this early stage customer acquisition cost, but rather than really focusing on the second side of that important equation and improving lifetime value across the funnel. So we'll take an example of our friend Paolo here and one of our clients, the farmer's dog. Funny enough, Paolo is a farmer's dog customer, irrespective of his time at Simon, and Paolo does have 2 dogs. So kind of walks through that diagram with a real type example here, right? Paolo is looking for fresh dog food because Kibble's just not doing it for his 2 pups. He visits the farmer's dog and signs up for email. He receives that welcome email. We're tracking all this engagement and understanding things like what quiz data did Paolo put up, right? For a lot of these pet care and skincare brands we work with, they have a ton of valuable, what's called now zero-party data. And it's not always the easiest to use that in more rigid tools. So we're allowing, the farmer's dog team to then segment on, the weight of Paolo's dog, any conditions they might have, and start to personalize that as he goes through the funnel. From there, we see that Paolo dropped off. We're able to send a personalized abandoned cart email actually addressing his dogs, not Paolo. So one of the unique pieces of Simon, again, is this data flexibility where we're not just ingesting data about Paolo, but also ingesting what we call relational data or non-contact data. So this can be a store catalog, a product catalog, or information about someone's skin or their dogs. So we're sending an abandoned cart personalized to Paolo's dogs, addressing his 2 dogs, telling them that they left some fresh food before it gets there. We're then syncing that audience to Facebook after Paolo doesn't convert via the cheaper CRM channels, which ultimately gets Paolo to come back to the site, purchases a free trial. He downloads the app, which we're pushing him towards because he hasn't downloaded it yet, and starts to kind of have this longer life cycle with the farmer's dog, which really sees him become a high lifetime value customer, someone who's engaged across multiple channels and who has converted from a free trial to a long-term paid subscription. Paolo, I'm going to keep going here. Do you mind reading that Q&A for me in the chat, though?
Yep. So we just had a quick question asking if that Google click was from a paid campaign.
So in this scenario, it wasn't, but that's a great question. I appreciate you for asking, Jeanette. So it was not from a paid campaign in this scenario, but it very well could be, and we would be tracking that, right? So part of what we do when we capture on-site behavior is we are looking at what is present in the URL, notably for UTM tags, right? So if that had come from a Google ad, be it a search ad or a paid display ad from DV360, we can then capture that information and use that as acquisition source was paid search or was paid display or paid video, depending what we're capturing from that UTM tag and parsing. Hopefully I answered your question. Let us know those follow-ups, but great question. Acquisition source is definitely something we see used to not just measure results, but also inform different customer funnels based on acquisition source. So, here's a quick example of an email that Paolo might have received. In this case, we're using our friend Jason, which is actually our CEO, who also uses the Farmer's Dog. And as I mentioned here, we're not just addressing this email to Jason, but we're also using information we know about his dog, Franklin. And so that's being prepared in the next order. We're also pulling in courier information here. So it's another really cool data source that's become a lot more sophisticated with kind of the environment post-pandemic. Is we're grabbing different courier information to inform a triggered send. And then this last piece at the bottom is we're using our machine learning models. We have a recommendation model that often, folks assume is retail focused, right? And to suggest similar SKUs that you might want, but it can be focused on anything. And in this case, the Farmer's Dog, because they don't have too many SKUs they want to push towards you, is actually pushing content based on your profile. Right? So we're actually adding dynamic content on a one-to-one basis based on Paolo's browse behavior, or in this case, Jason's browse behavior, his purchase behavior, and other information that our predictive models are looking at. And the last piece, as I mentioned before, is the Farmer's Dog is really into experimentation. They want to know what performs better, what cadence works better. If there's multiple dogs, you include both their names or just say your pets. So they've done a ton of engineering that used to rely heavily on their tech team and kind of, make it so that launching an experiment was quite burdensome. It was like one experiment per month. And they've 10x the number of experiments have been able to launch by just removing that crutch and allowing marketers to launch experiments all on their own. So, kind of taking a step back and talking about where we feel Simon drives differentiated value in the marketing technology category, and particularly in the customer data platform category, there's one through line in all these examples, and that is time to value. We pride ourselves on time to value. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the way we approach implementation is all your implementation team is at Simon. We're not using any third parties or giving you kind of an IKEA manual and say, good luck. We also take a use case driven approach where we really aim to understand what are the 3 to 5 use cases you want to launch in the first, 3 months of onboarding, and use that as kind of our guiding map to successfully onboard our clients. So, in the Wyndham example, the big piece for them was they were one of those companies I mentioned early on that had a lot of legacy technology, and we're looking, as they brought on Snowflake to be their cloud data warehouse, for a tool that could help continue to modernize the marketing ecosystem as they modernize their data ecosystem. So what used to take them 3 to 4 weeks in terms of launching complex campaigns with their old stack is now done within a day with Simon. That was a huge win in terms of allowing them to be a lot more agile, and then also to simply increase the level of complexity in terms of segmentation and personalization that they were doing previously. TripAdvisor is one of our largest clients. You might imagine, kind of given their global scale and just tech forwardness as a business, they built a lot of technology, and a big need for them was a company that can scale. So we work, as you might have seen on that first slide, with clients that are kind of hot D2C brands that have been around for two years, all the way to brands that have been around forever and have built a lot of internal technology that need to understand, how can I help my marketing team take advantage of everything we've built, and something that can scale with everything we've built. And so with Trip, we've really been able to kind of flex the scale that Simon has been able to put forward for them. And then the last example is Bombas. Bombas is an awesome client of ours. They've been a client for quite some time now, and really their big focus was, their tech stack reflected some data silos that made its way into their teams. And so their teams were looking at different sources of truth. They were working off different tools, and there was not one place where they can connect the dots, and give them the flexibility for everyone to kind of work from the same place and have one canvas to really put forward high-performing campaigns. So this is the last slide that I'll bore y'all with before we let Paolo take over the demo. But really, if you wanted a high-level architecture view of Simon, this is kind of how we look at it. With your data sources on the left, again, we are responsible for putting this data in and creating that standardized schema. We're doing a lot of that identity stitching to help you identify as much of those anonymous users to a known user as possible. We're providing machine learning models to then train on all that data because we have so much data stored in Simon. And then we're allowing you all to do really rich multi-channel journeys with enhanced personalization, segmentation, and experimentation. Paolo, I know you wanted to kind of give some highlights here. You probably know this better than I do.
Yeah, so just high level, like for today's demo, what we'll be going through, and like just in a couple quick bullet points, we're going to be focusing more on the middle and the right side of this diagram for the purpose of today's overview. On the left side, that's where we'd be getting into data sets, SQL querying, all that fun stuff. So on that, we could obviously get into on a personal demo, talk about all your data sources, right? How we can solve some of those challenges, right? But high level, we'd be staying in the middle where we can be able to aggregate a whole entire customer profile, like Ben was talking about, between all the actions someone's taking and then all different data sources, combining who is Paolo across all these different data sources, blending in data science models that we're able to calculate, such as churn propensity, purchase propensity, creating dynamic segments in the platform, and then executing a campaign out. You can do that within Simon as well.
Cool. Let's go to the demo, Paolo.
Sweet. All right. Let me get through and share the screen here. Awesome. So first step here is, right, kind of in the middle of this diagram is that unification of data across different data sources. So within Simon, we've taken data sources from a data warehouse, tag, ecom, CRM, loyalty, right? All the different places where data lives, and we create a unified customer profile, or you could call it 360-degree view of a customer, golden record of customer, whichever, a full entire profile on a customer that we've then aggregated all together. You see, we have quick KPIs on here of Emily. So what's some engagement, how long she's been a customer, what's the LTV, total transaction spend. So we can even calculate some fields on the way in as well. So we can help calculate LTV and attribute some data science models as well, which I'll get into in just a moment. But just a quick overview, here's all the data that we've ingested on Emily. So what's Emily's birthday? What's Emily's average order value? What campaigns Emily's a part of? Any affinity towards any certain product line? Some of the data science models as well that we're attributing. What is Emily's churn likelihood? Is she a happy customer, not happy customer, and etc. But then also being able to marry that in with all the actions Emily's taking within that customer lifecycle, like in that slide Ben was showing earlier. So what has Emily clicked on the website? What has she purchased? What has she abandoned a cart on? What emails, what's her email engagement, calling to support, making returns, etc. All the actions within a customer lifecycle. We're all able to aggregate that all into one singular contact here. And so this helps solve the problem in, okay, we don't know who our customer is across all these data sources. We're able to aggregate that all together. And so what's unique about Simon is moving into the segment builder now, all this data that we've ingested, aggregated to a person, all the actions they're taking and attributes about them is all available to be able to create a segment on. So we'll head here to our segment builder and I'll hit edit. So again, a segment builder is a segment builder, right? They all function kind of similarly, but the main difference with Simon is because the breadth of the data is so wide, we're able to get extremely narrow in audience creation. So you could get very specific in the audience, be able to ensure you are executing a campaign and targeting an audience at the right time based on recent actions they've taken. And I'll show you how we can do that here in our segment builder. So in the segment builder here, just talking through a core use case in Simon, our best customers. Who are our best customers? We want to be able to go after lower hanging fruit, right? What is that criteria for our best customers? So some of the data science models we could layer in here, folks that have a purchase propensity greater than 90%. But then also we could layer in folks with a high lifetime value. So we want to layer in, okay, folks that have a high purchase propensity, but then also have a high LTV. And then we can also layer in other attributes as well. Let's say you want to narrow it down by location. Who are our best customers that, for example, live near the Chicago area? We will narrow down geographically as well. But then also marry that in with actions folks are taking as well. So have they made a purchase X amount of times within this time frame? Or email engagement? Have they clicked or opened an email in this many times in this specific time frame? But not only dive into, all right, they just made a purchase, but dive into some of the data on that specific event. So what brand did they purchase? What was the product category, category type? You could see in the drop down here, a lot of different items. Did they use any promo codes? What promo code did they use? What was the price? What was the store type? You get very specific in what they purchased. So if we want to say our best customers have a high LTV, high purchase propensity, they made a purchase in the past month and it was at least $100. But then also dive into not just, hey, they made a purchase or email clicked. Other actions, of course, are, any abandoned cart campaigns. But then look at as well, hey, how long were they browsing? What were the SKUs? What was the cost of the cart they abandoned as well? You could dive into that. But not only who fits this criteria, you can use this also for suppression as well. So let's make sure we're not targeting folks that made a return in the past week, for example, or currently have a open support case with customer support, right? Or maybe recently closed on like a day ago, for example. You could use this for suppression as well. And maybe even look at some of the data science models as well. Let's make sure we're suppressing folks that have a churn propensity higher than 40%. So let's make sure we're being very targeted, suppressing the right folks for this campaign we're planning on executing. And of course, as I'm sure you've noticed on the right-hand side here, in Simon, we're giving you real-time feedback on the audience as you're creating it, as well as some quick KPIs. They would help understand the audience just a little bit while you're creating it. But we also take that a step further. For example, let's say we want to save this audience of our best customers. We'll go ahead here, and then we could go ahead and just do a quick scroll down, and we deliver insights, machine learned insights, contextual to this audience created. So we can learn, hey, we create this audience of our best customers, for example. What's the year LTV? What is the average order value? What can we expect in engagement, for example? Transaction count, return rate, etc. So this is allowing you as a marketer to be able to understand, okay, this is how large our audience is, and then learn a little bit about the audience before we target them. So this is going to dramatically increase the velocity of your campaigns, because another pain that we hear a lot of folks have before adopting Simon is, okay, we currently today, what we need to do in order to create an audience, we need to send a ticket to an engineering team or whoever, they get back to us, let's say a week, 2 weeks later, we learn the audience isn't big enough or it doesn't substantiate our ad spend, and then back to the drawing board, and that slows down the whole campaign. Within Simon, it took me a little bit longer to explain it than to actually do it. It dramatically increases the velocity of your campaigns. You're able to execute, so you're able to build an audience, learn a little bit about them, and be able to execute a campaign on that as well. So I'm going to pause here for a moment. I know we went through quite a bit. Give folks a moment to type in a question in the chat, but just high level what we went over. So we went over just a little bit on the data ingestion. We didn't show any SQL or anything like that, but we talked about being able to ID data from different data sources, be able to see a single view of a customer, and then be able to use all that data aggregate to a person to then be able to find the right people in an audience, blending in data from different data sources and data sets, be able to get a very specific audience that you could then execute a campaign on. And then once you create that audience, be able to learn a little bit more about them before you're able to execute a campaign to see if this is going to substantiate our ad spend, for example. So I'll pause here for another couple seconds, let folks add something into the chat before we move forward here. All right, perfect. So if I see anything pop up from this point forward, happy to jump on back, or there'll be another chance at the end as well. So now at this point, we have identified an audience who we want to target, learned a little bit more about them, green lights, everything's great. So now it's time to execute a campaign. So within Simon, you have a couple of different options. So one option is we can like send the audience on over, and then you could have within your tools today, like for example, USP, you could build out your journey there and we could send the audience on over there. That's one workflow. But another workflow is then Simon, you can have a whole multi-channel journey across different end channels and control all that logic within Simon. And that's the workflow I'm going to walk through today. And the main challenge this solves, I know it says journeys up here, everyone calls it a journey, but the difference with ours is the main challenge it solves, if you want to create a cohesive journey across different end channels, for example, say email here, SMS here, and then when you want to be able to target social ads on another tab, if you want to be able to make that cohesive, it's a lot of tab switching and kind of playing like Tetris in the different tabs in a certain way. Here within Simon, you're condensing all of that logic and using Simon as air traffic control, essentially, where, okay, we have this audience we want to send this message to. Each node here or little box here is where we're going to send that off to. And within Simon, you're going to be able to control all of that logic of who we're sending to and when and what channel. So that's this tool here and what we mentioned, a journey. So I'm just going to walk through a sample journey I created. We're just targeting the segment of best customers that we just walked through and created. So anyone who fits this best customer segment will receive this journey, but journeys can also be activated off of actions folks take as well. So if anyone abandoned a cart, you can have a journey mapped from that as well. If anyone activated their accounts, they're a new customer, you can have an entire welcome series journey mapped out as well. It could be a set it and forget it. But in this case, just for the cases of this demo, I just have a sample. We're targeting our best customers in this journey. So right away, we're going to be able to put folks in social ads. We're sending them ads on Facebook. We add them into an audience there. We're sending them an email via the ESP, and we're sending them an SMS. And of course, you can add in time delays, but then be able to do smart branching. So this is an example of determine the next best action based on previous actions. So if we know they engaged with the email, they could go down an email track. If we know via UTMs, if they clicked on the SMS ad, we could go down and send follow-up SMSs. But not just next best action, it could also be branch logic based on, let's say, purchase. If you want to do a post-purchase journey, you could branch based on what was the amount of purchase or certain product. And then have another branch where if anyone made a return at any point, we're going to kick them out of the journey, for example, right? We don't want anyone who made a return and then a week later send them a request to review a product, for example, they just returned. So that's how you could be a lot more thoughtful in and use the smart branching as well. But then also you're able to add in experiments right within the journey as well in Simon. So in this case, if folks didn't really engage of our best customer segment didn't really engage with those first couple messages we sent, we can run a multivariate experiment right in the middle of the journey and set that right in here in Simon as well. So we have an A/B test with a holdout. And within Simon, it's not just you're able to test template A versus template B with different subject line and slightly different colors, or discount versus no discount. It could be two entirely different streams of communication as well. Like we see your email plus social ad, SMS plus maybe a different social ad, plus a different email, and etc. And so the power of this is within Simon, right in the middle of the journey, you can set the experiment, not have to go to a different UI or different tool or anything, be able to see this right within the tool. And when we create an experiment, there's gonna be a couple things that we're gonna set. One is what was our conversion goal? What was the goal of the experiment? What action did we want anyone to take? And then what was the attribution window? So the action anyone can take could be any action that we track. It was join the loyalty program, make a purchase, activate their account, for example. So we could dive right into an example of what an experiments report will look like. So we have the conversion goal, purchases, one of the most common ones, and we did the attribution window of a day, but it could be a week, a month, etc. It can be any attribution window you'd like. But then also you can reuse experiments across different audiences as well. So you can test, okay, we're going to test this experiment versus segment A, test this experiment as well with segment B, and compare those results. You can do that within Simon as well. And then you have the quick breakdown, total number of contacts we set for this experiment, all the conversions and conversion rate. You're able to get this quick data as well. Now to wrap up here, we have one other report as well on the reporting subject. We have one other report as well where you're able to see the efficacy, for example, of a start point to an endpoint goal. So we're looking at the efficacy of an email campaign, who got the specific email, did an end in purchase. But just like the experiments, that end goal could be any action, join the loyalty program, activate account, etc. So our favorite thing, quick KPIs right up here, how many total people got it, right? What were their total completions, completion rate? But then some of the awesome stuff here, which really is the power of this report, is seeing the milestones. So these are the steps in the funnel that when you set up this report, you want to see between that start point to that end point. So people who got an email, what were the next steps you want to be able to track from there to the point of purchase. So naturally, who opened, who clicked, who then went to the website, abandoned a cart first, then purchased, etc. One quick story is one of our clients, they used this report and they had a milestone put in that folks favorite a product or add something to the wish list. They learned that a lot of folks in this through the completions is that a lot of folks will favorite a product first and then make the purchase X amount of times later. So what they ended up doing was that action of favoriting or adding something to a wish list, they created a trigger off of that and had a campaign. So if anyone added something to a wish list and then didn't check out within 2 days, for example, or X amount of time, they would then be put into a journey, an email campaign to help speed up that conversion as well from anyone who favorited a product to then purchase. And then final on this report is looking at a drill down of that goal of purchase, for example. So what was the most popular color of purchase? Most common product that was chosen. It could be what was the store types. If it makes a brick and mortar and e-com, what was the store that was purchased in? Or break it down by certain customer buckets. It could be demographics wise. So folks 20 to 25 purchase this, 25, 26, 30 purchase that, etc. Or even certain customer buckets where we determine these are our champions, these are indifferent, these are likely to churn. From all of those, who purchased? You could see, hey, folks that we determine likely to churn made a couple purchases in this journey as well, or for this email campaign. And so with that, I know I blew right through and went high level on a lot of things, but that concludes the demo for today. And so just a quick recap of what we talked through. So we talked through IDing contacts, being able to know your customer across all different data sources and all different data sets. Then we talked about creating dynamic segments to be able to then activate on all of that data, blend in data science, attributes on a customer, all actions folks are taking as well. And then we also talked about being able to execute a campaign, a multi-step journey campaign within Simon through all of your end channels. And then we learned a little bit about experimentation as well. And then a results report looking at efficacy of an email campaign, for example. So at this point, I'll open up for any questions to be put in the Q&A. But with that, if there were no questions, we're looking forward to a personal demo here where we can be able to talk through some of your use cases or challenges that you're seeing today as well. And we could be able to solution for those. Thank you all for your time today.